My name is David Brier. Some call me the Brandfather, and you're listening to the Head Smack Podcast.
You are listening to conversations with misfits, mavericks, and trailblazers.
Hey, welcome to the Head Smack Podcast. My name is Paul Pavoni, and I'm excited to have another misfit with me. I have David Brier with me, and he is the guy CEOs call when they've burned so much cash on marketing, their spouses think they have a coke habit. He's like rehab for brands worldwide, except instead of getting them clean, he gets them profitable. Many think of him as the Betty Ford Clinic of Branding, who's generated over $9 billion for his clients. How you doing, David?
I'm doing very, very well, and if there's any folks who are listening who do have a coke habit, just listening to this may be the first step to recovery.
So good to have you on, also known as the Brand Father. And so we're going to have a great discussion. I think you and I are both into branding, and so I think we're going to have a fun talk about it, as well as helping people kind of get themselves unstuck. We'll be talking about your books. You've got some books on the topic. You write about it all the time. You have a very active social media presence, and so I'm looking forward to this discussion.
Me too.
All right. So the way I like to start this off is a little bit about your origin story, kind of hearing where you came from and how you came to be. As you can see behind me, I've got superhero stuff. I love origin stories. And so, so share a little bit about your origin story, kind of where you started, and you can go as far back as you want.
Absolutely. Well, I was born in Brooklyn at a very young age, and basically, so I'm a Brooklyn kid, and started my career in Manhattan. I was ever since I could really, hold a pencil, really, I was always engaged in art of one form or another, painting, artwork, sketches, life drawing, right? And basically, that was the stuff that was the stuff that really appealed to me because I always loved noticing things around me growing up in New York, going to the city, the cities, like different boroughs, Manhattan and Brooklyn, this, that, the other, and it was the stuff that made me stop in my tracks and go, "What was that?" And then whether it was a piece of cardboard or maybe a bus was going down and it had this incredible poster, art that was done for some campaign, or there was an amazing deli that I walked by and the smell, that incredible smell, you know? Um, so that kind of stuff, or street performance. So I always enjoyed the stuff that rose above the ordinary, commonplace, everyday routine. It's like, "Wait a second. Someone just did something that could have been ordinary, and all of a sudden that was it was wait a second, that was noteworthy. That was something, and that connected with me. That was the kind of wavelength that I really resonated with, and so with that, I was gonna be an illustrator. For those that have followed me for some time, that was what I was gonna be, and I was gonna, go to magazines like Rolling Stone and this, that, the other, and illustrations and such like that. And, I ended up designing actually a cover of Rolling Stone, for
Oh,
one of
wow.
their special editions, summer editions, because when they have their special summer editions, it's usually a compilation. So you might have, um, uh, maybe an actor, a musician, author, etcetera. So you'd have this kind of smorgasbord of talent and disciplines. And so I actually did end up actually designing a cover of Rolling Stone.
Oh, wow.
But that was basically it, and I got into the design, and I got into the art of typography, and this was all done pre-computer. So I was
Yes,
designing
yes.
all this stuff by
The olden
hand.
days.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's amazing. And so, I actually interviewed the guy who did a Rolling Stones album cover. He did the Babylon album cover. He was the artist that did that. So it's amazing. One person did Rolling Stones album cover, and one did Rolling Stone magazine. So that's
Yeah,
pretty awesome.
yeah.
So you mentioned your love for creativity and the arts, and I love New York. I've been there a couple of times. When did the transition happen? Because art and creativity and drawing pictures and all of that stuff is very different to branding and design and marketing. So When did that transition happen to you? How did that transition happen from one to the other?
Oh, great question. I'll tell you. Here was the kind of epiphany. When I've in my experience, when one is creative, one finds inspiration in the most unlikely places. You might hear a piece of music and all of a sudden you're like, "Whoa, those harmonies." Or you might dig that time signature, or you hear instrumentation that was, like, never done before. Or there might be colors, or someone like Andy Warhol might take a can of soup and all of a sudden make it something that everyone loves. So, for me, when I was doing life drawing and doing illustrations and doing artwork and was planning on being an illustrator, it was literally my last semester of college. I saw a publication, which is no longer in existence, but I actually have stored in my office because they were printed on newsprint. I have them in a not exposed to light because I don't want them yellowing out. I literally have them. It was a magazine called Upper and Lower Case, which referred to type and design. There just happened to be an issue on a drawing board in one of the art classes I went to, and I looked at this and I was like, it stopped me in my tracks. I'd never seen attention to detail like this.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
it was, you know, and I'll just give everyone so it's not an abstract, for those that may not be artistically inclined or whatever, we've all encountered something that was done in a particular way, almost like on autopilot. This is the way it's done, the usual. And then someone does it. Now, that could be a breakfast. You go to a restaurant and all of a sudden someone brings you an omelet, and you're like, "I've never freaking seen an omelet like this before." It could be that. It could be a sandwich. It could be the way someone sings. It could be Michael Jackson moonwalking across the stage, and everyone goes, "What the hell did I just see?" We've all seen any discipline. Take your pick, and it could even be in the form of negotiating. You could see people doing business, and someone is masterful. So it's like, always activities that we see, daily ones, and all of a sudden someone comes along and elevates it and builds it to a level that no one had seen it before. That's what I saw when I saw this publication. And I started just turning every page slowly because there was not a single element on the page that was just randomly put there because that's what usually goes there. Like the headline, the choice of words, the fonts, the spatial relationship. I was blown away. And keep in mind, this is a black and white publication. So it didn't have color, it didn't have glossy, didn't have all the shiny shit. It's like just so this is pure. If you either had it or you didn't. And that was literally the turning point. I saw that and I was like, holy shit. All of a sudden, because up till that point, being an illustrator was that thing that I was focused on. But now seeing this publication, I realized I was one instrument in an orchestra. That was the orchestra. Which one do I want which one do I wanna command? That was the shift.
Wow, wow. And so how did that lead you into the industry? Like, what was your first job like?
Well, I immediately looked for who was responsible for this, and I see design director Herb Lubalin. If you have some younger listeners who are like, "I've never heard of this person, Herb Lubalin," look him up. Herb Lubalin. Seriously. Just look up Herb Lubalin under your search, look under images and just start looking at the logos and stuff. Because he did stuff with design and typography that was mind-blowing. It definitely affected at least 2, if not 3 generations of designers. And so I started, like, hunting down his shit. Now, keep in mind, this is at the time where we do not have all of the conveniences we have today. So I didn't have Google. I didn't have the internet. I didn't have a computer. None of that was part of business yet. That came about 6 or 7 years later. So all this time learning this stuff, I'm learning this new thing of lettering and typography and have these and just all this stuff because it's all been, what are the tools? What are this? What are that? So I just started becoming obsessed. with seeing all of his output wherever I could. Oh, there's a show, there's a show where it's featuring his designs. Good, I'm gonna look, I'm gonna find it, and that was basically how it was, all analog, and it was just learning a new discipline, a new craft. And my first I think this was my first one because I went to after community college, I went to school visual arts in Manhattan on 23rd Street, and, I started studying some of his partners. There was, Roger Ferriter, who designed some packaging with him. There was, Ed Bengat, who I became very close friends with. Ed At the time, I was living in Jersey, and Ed Bengat lived, like, about 6 or 7 miles away, and I'd go over, and we'd hang out, and sometimes he'd drive me home after class. Um, if you got on with Ed, it was great. If you rubbed him wrong, he would be a he he'd let you have it, man, hardcore. And so, we got on well, and so because he had designed many of the fonts that Herb Ballin used. And there was Tom Carnesi, and there was Tony DeSpina, the whole all the usual suspects. And so I just became really studious.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's amazing. Several things that you've said there just really stood out to me, especially the when people love what they do, they can turn it into an art, and I've seen it happen not only with you know quote air quotes artists. I've seen people that love designing landscapes, that love serving food and creating food. You would mention breakfast, that you can tell that they love the craft of it, that they're an artist at what they're doing, and they're elevating what everybody else does and making it something special because of their love and passion for it. And so it's not really just set aside for the people that are creative. It's with big C. I think all of us, when we get a passion for something, can elevate it to another level if we love it enough.
Oh, yeah. Well, and here was the crazy part. So he had me over to his house a few times, and it was kinda like he kinda turned it into a gingerbread house. But what he ended up doing, he approached the house the way he approached designing fonts. So, he had this black and white tiling when you open up the front door, he had this black and white tiling that not only because it was an older house and it was not perfect, so he was compensating and shaving the little tiles so that they all actually worked perfectly, and also on the stairs, because not all the stairs the levels were exact. It was not again, older house, so, let's say your step was 6 inches tall and one might be 5.5, one might be 5 and 3/4. And so he's compensating and making sure to the, naked eye, you wouldn't notice any imperfection because he
Wow.
compensated for all of it. So that was the kind of fun stuff that I was exposed to.
Right. Very, very particular with it. Now, of course, doing design and being creative and, doing magazines and all of that stuff is one thing. But now you talk a lot about branding. When did that conversation start with you? Because, I've been in this a long time, probably not as long as you have, but pretty close. And so, the talking about branding, it doesn't seem like that has had been a discussion in the olden days. It seems like it's more of a discussion now. When did that first get on your radar to begin talking about that?
Probably around 85, 86, 87 in there, and I someone had introduced me to the book, Positioning: The Battle for Your Mind, and so that was a powerful book. That introduced me to a concept that was bigger because let me back up a few years. I did not like the advertising culture in New York. It was like I was looking, was there a place for me to land? An agency that I could really get into? Didn't dig it, and it was frantic, and it was an assembly line, and it was just nothing. It wasn't the kind of stuff that we all discovered and appreciated later, like that TBWA might be putting out or Whedon and Kennedy, and stuff like that. So I didn't dig that, and I didn't dig the design agencies because they tended to be more Upper East Side, very, 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 it's like they're dressed as cool, a little more proper, And I was like, "Okay, well, I'm certainly not gonna fit into a more proper environment. That's just ain't the way I flow." And so I was really out of necessity, I was kinda like just following this entrepreneurial journey, ran into that book, and then I was like, "Oh, there's more to this." Now, at the same time, again, going back to Herb wasn't just cosmetic. He was choice of words. He was really such a wordsmith. So it really showed me that beautiful it's kind of like there's some bands that have great music, some that have great words, and the great ones have great everything. And he was bringing all of those disciplines together. They're he made them so good, they were inseparable, right? That was so I was starting to see this bigger picture, and I don't remember when I think this might have been the turning point. The guys that wrote Positioning, Al Reese and Trout, those 2 guys, they wrote the 22 Immutable Laws of Marketing to leverage or no, the 22 Immutable Laws of Positioning, I believe it was. Think. It was either marketing or positioning. And then as branding became a little more prominent, now they did a sequel, which was the 22 Immutable Laws of Branding, right? Which I thought was okay. They were to me, they were milking that cow a little dry. I'm not gonna and so that was kind of like the point at which I started to see, ooh, there's a number of pieces here because I wasn't looking at branding, even though I was very design centric and very design sensitive. I wasn't only looking at it through a designer's lens. I was looking at it more as the conductor of the symphony, not just not one of the musicians.
Right, right. Well, and their books, I think, impacted a lot of people and really changed the way they thought about building a brand and working on a brand. But we never really, I don't remember using the word branding. I remember we'd talk about positioning and things like that,
Yeah,
and being different and all of that. But we never that the term branding seems almost like it's become a new thing that everybody says, but it's kind of talking about old stuff that we've been talking about for decades, but it's kind of same dog, different haircut, right? And
yeah,
so with branding and marketing and with what they wrote about positioning and things like that, I want to make sure that we understand, how would you define the difference between maybe what they were talking about with positioning and irrefutable laws of marketing and all of that stuff to where we are now when it comes to branding?
yeah. So I'm gonna give you, context of it because it will make the most sense to anybody, whether especially people who are in business. Whenever I am speaking to a company and they're kinda like, "Hey, David, we wanna talk to you about X we need XYZ, blah, 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 blah." Where's their attention? Their attention's always on, growth, their attention's on more sales, their attention's on more client acquisitions, etcetera, more market share. That's what I call focus on the finish line, quote, unquote. Air quotes for those of you that are only listening. And so the thing that happens is there are 2 things that have preceded every sale that has ever occurred in history. And that sale could be a marriage proposal, or that sale could be, "Hey, I make these freaking amazing burgers, dude. You gotta freaking try one." Now, so the thing is that there's this thing called marketing. But here's what people don't get, because I've been in meetings with CEOs of multi-billion dollar corporations, and they're like, "Oh, we need to do something for our brand. Hey, give it to the marketing department." That would be like me saying, "We need a new menu item. Hey, when is Charlie the janitor coming in? He knows some pretty good recipes." Wrong person. Might be nice guy, but wrong person. So marketing is execution. getting the word out, getting the promotions out, getting all that kind of stuff. But it's not its job to differentiate, which comes before. So so there's a sequence. Branding is the first thing that is done because why should anyone give a shit? Why does this matter? How is this different? How is this not the same as? And if this is truly revolutionary, how come we haven't freaking created a new category, reframed it entirely? That's a very, very, very different set of questions. And that's above and beyond what positioning does. Because you could say, hey, yeah, we're like this, but better or faster or simpler or whatever. Or you kind of do like a pivot or a little bit of a reframe. It's not an entire redefinition, which sometimes is necessary. So it's that sequence. That's really kind of how it evolved for me because I've always been very inquisitive and I've never been a fan, even from my teenage years, I was never a fan of what I call lazy observation and lazy thinking. It's like, if something doesn't make sense, it's like, "What the hell did you freaking just say? What do you mean?" I love when someone says something they think is incredibly illuminating with lots of jargon and tons of lingo, and I'll just pause and I'll say, "What the hell did you just say?" And the crazy thing is, first of all, that person, rarely do they ever get angry. They're like, yeah, they realize they actually kind of like were drunk in the blue Kool-Aid. And the other people around me they all heave a collective sigh of relief, like,
Somebody said it. Yeah.
finally someone said it, right? Yeah,
Right. When I think when we're so familiar with something, and especially if we're been in an industry or been in a position or whatever, when we talk about ourselves and what we do, it's so easy to get into that corp speak, where we know what we're talking about. We're using all the words to try and sound fancy. We're trying to use the words that insiders know very well, but we don't realize that we're talking about something that is not clear to those that are listening.
totally. Well, that's why when I wrote Brand Intervention, I wrote that in 2017. So that was after like being in the industry for like 35 years. When I wrote that, I had a few things. One is I wanted to eliminate all fat. I want to eliminate all lingo, all jargon. There's not one bit of marketing speak in that book at all. You can freaking call up the FBI and say, "We need you to conduct a search now. There's no lingo. Please find some." You will not find any, man. And that was intentional. I wanted it to be anybody could understand that, and people love it. There's that plus the fact that was so frustrated with the existing standard of books because the normal books are like, let's say, business book, give or take 300 pages, give or take. But, there's always the 10 pages of magic somewhere in there. What the hell is the other 290 pages doing? They're doing foreplay and they're doing post-coitus, kind of like, puffing the cigarette.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's basically a blog post that somebody's told them to turn into a book.
Totally. So I went the opposite, and I wrote intentionally only as much as was necessary. So as a result, my font, I use that as an asset. My font, normal book font is 12 point, sometimes 11 point, 12 point, depending on the font. Mine is 36.
Oh wow! So if you're an older person, it's perfect for you. You don't need your glasses.
I cannot tell you the amount of elation that I have seen on the faces of people who are like 50 plus who open and they go, finally. I'm like, finally what? They're like, a book I can read without my cheaters, is what I've actually been told.
So and you've shed some things there that I want to kind of talk about a little bit more as well. Is it seems like online, and maybe it's engagement bait and stuff. People try and talk. What comes first, branding or marketing, and so they go back and forth, and sometimes people have wrong definitions of the two. They don't even know where the distinction is between the two, and you've kind of shared a little bit about that. But when it comes to your definitions of branding and what you do and what the difference is how do you define it?
I define branding with four words. And this, by the way, is in place of the 25,000 plus books on branding. And I am not exaggerating. if you are listening to this and you're not driving a vehicle and you're actually like listening to it, you can pause right here and you can go on Amazon and you could search under books and type in branding. You will find there's over 25,000, not 2,500, 25,000 books. And so when I started writing my book, I was like, wait a second, how can there be, there were less books then, but still in the thousands. And why is it that there's no agreed upon definition? So I looked at it and I was like, okay, what is the true essence of branding? We came down to a word definition. The art of differentiation.
Nice.
And if you actually look at that, you go, how can I use that? Well, let's see. If someone is doing something that makes it immediately recognizable, distinct, and apart from all the other options out there, that is branding. We may have used to the tools of language. They may have used the tools of color. They may have used the tools of shape, the tools of texture, the tools of smell. All of those are different tools. And when you have that clarity of the tool versus the overarching discipline, then you become pretty freaking unstoppable.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, everybody does have their own definition of branding. Even I have my own definitions, and I've interviewed Marty Newmeyer on here as well, and he has his definition. And Andy Starr, I just had released his episode not too long ago, and he, of course, aligns with Marty. And so I love that that differentiation uh, highlighted in what you do, because I think, and one of the things that you talk about is rising above the noise. And I don't know
Yeah,
whether that came from living in Manhattan or being around Manhattan, because there's a lot of noise there. And so I want to dive a little deeper into that, and maybe even talk about some strategies and some things that you can do. And you kind of shared like a whole list of them quickly, but I want to dive a little deeper into those. Talk about that differentiation. If that's what branding is differentiation. If it is about rising above the noise, what are some strategies that somebody can start looking at where they're going wrong and what they can do to make things better?
perfect, perfect. Yeah, Marty and I, we ended up speaking probably about 10 months ago. We were aware of each other, but we hadn't actually spoken. And he was south of the border. I think he's left California and said, "Hell with this," And so we went out there. There's a few things that I will share that I think are vitally important. One is, I think it's a very common myth that it's like, um, we've gotta we have to look at who we are, what our passions are. Well, it's inward, 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 inward. And it's the same, and this is I'm calling bullshit on the big consultancy that basically, even just to start a project, is gonna probably start at $500,000. When they do, we're gonna conduct an internal audit, and now they're going to interview the 250 employees so they can have this wonderful free and thick thing. What is it? First of all, what is the value of interviewing those employees? What? So you can collect the degree of indoctrination they have either come drunk on, or, or not, or to see if you have a fractured culture or not. But at the end of the day, they're not your freaking audience that you're actually communicating to, so why the hell are you talking to them in the first place? So it's that kind of bullshit. I have no patience for that is bullshit. And for anybody that has ever been sold that, bullshit. Just call it for what it is.
It's just
Now,
to justify a high price tag.
it's bullshit. It's smoke and mirrors. In fact, I remember when I was still in New York, I remember hearing, and I'll leave them nameless, out of a momentary m impulse for kindness. And so there was one of the big, 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 big shops, and I heard how they did the presentation. So they brought in, I guess, the team that was the client committee group or whatever like that into a room, and they had these panels with, like, about 500 sketches and things on, like, to impress them with the sheer quantity, the avalanche of work that had been put in. Look, to me, the greatest value that we all provide, if you're a great expert, a great advisor is going to make the complex simple. They're not gonna make the simple complex. That's just
Right.
software bullshit. So that you don't need to go down. But now that I've, conducted my act of kindness for this morning, I will now move on to answering your question. I talked about that internal soul searching and all that kind of stuff. The wrong place. Now, you can take a little pit stop and you could say, okay, what's the thing that we bring to the market that's unique? Okay, you can write that down. That's a few words. Great. You can, I say, that, what's the problem we're solving? Write that down. Great. If you're doing it uniquely, great. All that is like, that's 3 sentences. Okay. That's 5 minutes. And if you're unimaginative, maybe it's 45 minutes and you need to like kind of think it through. Fine. The next thing to do, you now need to take an assessment of the noise out there because there's no single solution for any particular thing. If it if it's like, hey, well, we make a bike, and there are many other bike manufacturers, or we make a bike, or we make bikes. Other bike manufacturers may not be your competition. It may be anybody providing outdoor activity, right? Um, there's you may say, well, we have a new weight loss thing. Well, some people are like, well, weight loss is going to be nutrition. Another person's going to be weight loss is going to the gym. Another one's going to be weight loss is going to a retreat. Another one's going to be weight loss is fasting. Another one's going to be a weight loss is this special combination of herbs and spices and all this kind of shit, or whatever. So you have like all of these ways that anything can be solved, and this is as true in B2B as it is in B2C. So you need to take a look out there and go, what's the noise level? To make it practical, so it's not like too big a concept. Say, okay, all right, Coca-Cola. Who's your competition? Okay, Pepsi. Good, simple. Boom, boom. Now let's break it out a little bit. That's direct competition. We now have indirect competition. What would be indirect competition? You could say, you know what? Coffee. You go, wait a second. Coca-Cola is cold, it's in a can, and coffee's hot, and it's in a little cup that you throw in when you're done. But for each of the user, the audience, like that's where they get their jolt. They kind of like jack up their engine. And then you have like an even another little fraction. Now, I think this is brilliant marketing and naming. I don't endorse the product. I think it's a shit product. But 5 hour energy, from a standpoint of naming and distribution, it was right there. Because when people stop by convenience stations, what happens? There's two tanks that they've stopped to fill. There's the one that they're driving that has 4 wheels on it. Then there's the biological one. They're going to go in there and they're going to feed that engine a little bit. Give it some fuel. Well, it might be Coke, it might be Pepsi, it might be coffee, or as they're checking out, they see this little bottle that says 5 hour energy for someone that's on the road right there. I can buy that and just, boop,
It's
so
like flavored
see,
lighter fluid.
right? So you just got these little layers. So when you're developing a brand, getting back to your initial question, that's one of the things. You got to look out there and take inventory. What is the noise level? Some categories will have a low noise level, like it's not been penetrated. Others are going to be really deafeningly high. Now, do not make the mistake of thinking, oh, the one that's definitely high is going to be harder to crack. Sometimes it's really easy, sometimes even easier. And everyone's just doing variations on the theme, and there's so much white noise
Right, right.
that you can crush it
Yeah.
because you're the first person to say, why the hell not? And come in there with like an ingenious angle that breaks up and make it just something fresh and new.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. I love that. And for some of those, you'd mentioned it as well, is understanding the real problem that you're solving. So Coke is not replacing water. They're either trying to get a jolt, they're wanting something sweet. Maybe it's a something they drink in with other people at an event. Whatever it is finding what actual problem it solves, and then you could look at, well, who else is doing that, and where do we kind of fit in that? And you mentioned coffee. If they're drinking Coke for the jolt, well, then there's also coffee for the jolt. And then there's also 5 hour energy for the jolt. If it's a social drink, if it's whatever, is kind of understanding what the problem is that you're actually solving, and looking at how can we just add a little twist to that, right?
Yeah, well, and but also let me give this as an example, just because it's commonly thought of, "Oh, we've gotta really have something innovative or something that it." Well, here, let's take water, okay? Water. Now, there's a lot of freaking water that's sold, that's in bottles or whatever. Then along comes liquid death, okay? So liquid death, water in a can. What was different was their entire sensibility. They did not take themselves seriously. They were like, "How do we freaking absolutely just come out with the most unacceptable name possible for a beverage? And how do we turn it into how do we appeal to a demographic that's been ignored?" And so they looked at a distribution angle as part of their play. Instead of trying to get and compete on shelves, they ended up bringing it to concert where people could have that. And so sometimes your differentiator is gonna be how you where you meet that audience, how you make things easier, um, and
And
while I'm
sometimes it's your
very
personality, and that's a big part of what Liquid Death was, right? It's the personality.
complete, complete. Well, I mean, shit, what was it? I think they auctioned off a cooler that was a one of a kind cooler that was designed to look like a small casket, right? And I think it went on eBay, and I think they it was auctioned off. I think it finally sold for like 62 or $68,000. It was like, but the buzz
Wow.
that it got, because
Yeah.
you know what's you've got to go in with a degree of bravery, a degree of just this is not so serious. We can actually have fun. You know, how do we shake this up? And how do we defy the odds? How do we just what can we do that would make it impossible to forget?
Right. And I think that's there's quite a list of ways to differentiate yourself and to rise above that noise. And with Liquid Death, I mean, theirs was, we want to be, and our personality is going to be what's different. We're going to be the irreverent water distribution company that is going to put it in a can. We're going to talk about killing your thirst. We're going to use
Yep, murder
coolers
your
as
thirst. That's
coffins.
right.
Yeah, murder your thirst. And we're going to be the one that, when you order it at a bar, you don't look like the wuss drinking a little Dasani or whatever. You're gonna be drinking this thing that looks like some sort of a strong drink. And so they made their differentiation is, we are irreverent and edgy, and that's our personality. And that was it. It was because it was water, and it wasn't any special water. It was just water.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there was a client of mine long before, Father's what is that raw dog food that's popular now? Is it father's something? I'm forgetting the brand, kinda popular now, but before that, these guys out of Boston, or actually Massachusetts, they were making it because they had 22 Bolshois, these beautiful dogs. If you know the Bolshoi, they're beautiful dogs. Look kinda like a greyhound with a beautiful white coat, and they had about 22 of them, and a couple of them were getting a little questionable in the terms of their health, like, they may actually have cancer or something like that. So they were like, "Oh, wow." If you know dog owners love their dogs. Okay. So the thing is that they were needing some help because we just kinda hit this plateau and stuff, we're not breaking ground, and they showed me their brand, told me their story, and they make their stuff all by hand, and people pick it up and go to their beautiful, one of a kind they have, like, 22 kennels, gorgeous, made out of gorgeous wood, unbelievable, right? So they end up having this place called High Meadow Farms. The logo was a disaster. It was just like you'd look at it, you couldn't even tell what the hell it was. not well designed, not well structured. Also high mammal farms. There's nothing sounds fine, but it sure isn't memorable, right? And at that time, shoppers were not hip to know that, well, is puppy chow good for you or not? Is Purina good for your dog or not? And all these other options. So, I look at this and I start asking them about their clientele. Tell me about your clientele. I wanna understand them. And I found out they tend to be more affluent. They liked traveling. They liked going places where they can enjoy, wine, cheese, food, all that. So I come back to them short little bit later. I say, "I've got your new brand and the new name that the brand is gonna be." Like, "Oh, well, what is it?" Say, "Napa Fresh, food for dogs." You hear Napa Fresh, it's like 2 words, no lack of clarity. It's like instantaneous. And then instead of the usual visuals that would accompany the usual dog leaping midair, nice photographic treatment, I instead create these beautiful, like, landscape kind of thing with big brush strokes. It's like something you'd see on someone's wall. Very, very artful, very, very different vibe, totally different, and absolutely just crush it. And now what happens is they do more business in 1 month than it used to take 'em 4 months to do.
Wow, wow. That's amazing. That's
Yeah.
amazing, and, with brands like that and with Liquid Death, everybody's constantly trying to find a way to differentiate. Who else do you feel is on the liquid death level these days? Do you see anybody else in the space? Because I'm hard pressed to think of somebody that has made the radical category changing impact that liquid death has. And so, what are people missing? What are they? Is there another brand that you can think of, and why do you think there isn't, or if
I
maybe
think
there
there I
is?
think there are elements I think there are elements I think Tesla has certain elements that are really cool, like, when you look at like, here's, like this is the when I talked about fun a little bit ago. This is an example. So if you've ever driven in a Tesla, one of my clients, we went out and, he picked me up in his Tesla, and I said, "Oh, great. Here we go." It was my first my time experiencing G-force, and as we're leaving a red light, it's like, "Holy shit." And it was so smooth, but I loved it's like you had the different choices of modes. I think it went from regular to cruising to insanity, right? Like, insanity was the last one. And so that was and which was brilliant. And in one of the dials on the audio, instead of it going to 10, it went to 11, and I was like,
Oh, nice.
so it's that kind of stuff
Brilliant.
that's, like, so much fun, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So those are the building blocks. Um, there's just such a shitload. I'm gonna take a quick look because I write about so many of them, and I've really been wanting to focus more recently on boutique ones that might not have been heard of before. Um,
I know Poppy is trying, trying to differentiate themselves from other people as well.
yep,
But
yep, there's
there
Diamond
aren't as
Coffee.
many that have made the impact that Liquid Death has. That's for sure.
True. I mean, Red Bull has done a pretty good job, you know? It's just,
Yeah,
energy drink, they've done pretty good. Um, I you know, Hellman's, I think, has some really freaking funny ass commercials. Really, some crazy shit. Very, very inventive. So those guys are doing stuff.
I think
Um,
Wendy's is also doing it with their social media.
yep,
Being a little snarky, a little naughty. I think they're
absolutely,
doing a great job of kind of
absolutely.
standing out from other fast food.
Yep. And just from a consumer experience standpoint, I think Trader Joe's does a good job of really identifying themselves, and they made the smart play in making I think they're well over 85% of the products that they carry are now Trader Joe's private label. So that way now from a business strategy standpoint, it's very smart because now they're leveraging not only in the in-store experience, but "What is that?" "Oh, that's Trader Joe's." "Then where are you gonna get it?" "Trader Joe's." So it's like just a step close the loop. Um, yeah.
So when you talk about brand intervention, it's the title of your book. What does that mean? What does brand intervention mean?
Well, the thing is that I found that after doing it for over 3 decades, I started to spot there were around 33 basic potential blind spots or areas of confusion that anytime I discounted it going, "Oh, this person's running a $150 million brand. They know this shit," and I wouldn't bring it up. They would bite me in the ass usually within 48 hours, and I'd be like,
Wow.
"Ah!" And it would just be that kind of thing. So what I did was I was like, "Okay, I'm gonna write the book based on those 33 blind spots or confusions so as to eliminate," and people went nuts because it's simple. I avoided lingo. I didn't have complicated graphs. I didn't do even though I admired, how they analyzed and deconstructed stuff, the recent shot guys, oftentimes it was like their only examples were, okay, these, enormous brands that had big budgets. So how the hell was that gonna work for small to medium-sized businesses? So I wanted something that was gonna be applicable to anybody, no matter where you were, a startup, or you had plateaued and you were relevant 30 years ago, and now everyone's like, they only know you from then and not from now.
Right, right. So when there are 33 things. I know they're not ordered in priority, but out of the 33 things, are there ones that you find are probably the most? There it is for those that are watching the video. There's the cover, bright yellow book. Be
This
sure to
that
grab
I
it
did
on
not
Amazon.
exaggerate.
You
That is
weren't
the
kidding
size of the
about that.
font.
Wow, it makes you almost look like you're a hobbit holding a regular sized book.
I know, I know, I know. No, it was a total blast because, I mean, there's the chapter openers, there's the whole thing, so it worked great, and it's visual. I show you how this stuff is done in the back of it. But what are some of the points?
Ones that you find over and over that are the most common ones that people need brand intervention on?
Well, one is really making sure they really understand and don't keep collapsing marketing with branding. That's key. I'm gonna look through, and by the way, this is how I start out the book. This is the in the beginning of the book, this is the first thing you see. This is how to create a crappy brand in 3 easy steps. Okay. And so I show you show you that diagram in the beginning so we know where we're at. I talk about the factor of, the brand, and it's interesting, at this point, some of these have become more mainstream, but like that a brand is a tool of transformation, you know? It's not just cosmetic. Um, let me see here. I'm looking here, like, for those that are fans of and know me or follow me for some time, they know that I love coffee. This is one of the chapters, right? Which is what to do before you brand. And here's that's the entire chapter, by the way, right there. The entire chapter right
Oh
there.
wow.
The only thing worse than weak coffee is weak branding. No brand can afford to be timid or tentative. Why? Because neither a weak brand nor weak coffee will wake us up, and that's the job of branding. Neither coffee nor branding work when diluted. Make sure your brand is bold, standing for something that's worth waking up for. May your enemies be weak and your coffee strong.
I like that. I like that. And so I do encourage you to grab that book, and there will be links in the show notes. Brand intervention, and the
And
other book that you have
Daymond
out.
John
Oh,
wrote the foreword as well. That was fun.
oh, nice, Daymond John, forward by
Yes,
Daymond John. And so
yes.
you also have another book, and it's a little more recent, called Rich Brand, Poor Brand.
Yes,
Tell me a
hard to
little bit
believe
about
you're
that.
David in a world of Goliaths.
So tell me a little bit about that. What does that mean? Rich brand, poor brand. I know it's playing off of another title, but how is it relevant to what you're
Yeah,
doing?
well, I need to write to Kiyosaki because the fact that he actually, ripped off my title to my book, you know, unbelievable. So here was the interesting thing. I mean, we've all seen this. So you could give a killer brand solution to one company, and they would like turn that into millions of in revenue and millions in fans. You give it to the same tool, the same assets to another company, and it would barely get a tick. Like, what's the difference? That really became kind of like the genesis of the book. Because what is the difference? Because I've seen unhealthy, fractured cultures in companies that undermine no matter what good you give them. You bring an A player in there, that A player in like weeks is going to become a B or C. Why is that? An organization. That's a culture that is not built to fortify. And part of it is because I was starting to get exposed to different people. I definitely appreciate a lot of what Gary Vaynerchuk talked about. I ended up meeting Claude Silver, who I adore. She's incredible. We get along really, really, really well. And one of the things that I found was they had the philosophy that when they did let someone go, it wasn't like, "Get the hell out of here, you asshole, son of a bitch, don't ever come back," right? It was more like, "We're gonna help you find a gig, land a gig." And I was like, "Wow, that's a pretty that really is a different approach." Have to do that. Um, so I started to look at the role of people in building a sustainable brand. The
Nice.
and p people not only individually, but people collectively. It's kind of like we've all worked either in for organizations. There were organizations like you could have 2 organizations and both are like really hustling hard, all in. Except the difference is that one of those organizations, everyone's working for themselves, doing their own thing, making their own move. They don't really give a shit whether the people around them are also accelerating and elevating and progressing. And then you go to the other one and the same amount of hustle, except the difference is that they're making sure it's like, "I'm pulling you up, I'm pulling you up." Now, if someone isn't a good fit and they really don't want to put in the work, that's a different I'm not talking about that circumstance. But I'm talking about, wait a second, what's the overall collective culture, and are we in this together? Are we, like, gonna dominate? We're gonna bust ass? Am I gonna make sure that you are as empowered internally as I am supposed to be doing externally for our customers? And you build that kind of ecosystem of just elevation, 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 you're freaking unstoppable.
Yeah. Wow, I love that. I love I mean, you're talking my language because I love the discussion of branding and I love the discussion of culture. And a lot of people don't think about culture that being a part of branding, but it's almost, it's an internal branding. And so, like you'd mentioned that you can give the same solution to two different companies, but they don't have the framework, the foundation, the inner workings to take that strategy and take that solution to market in the right way and then sustain it because their culture is broken. What's going on inside is not good enough to support what their initiatives are, right?
Yeah, because otherwise it just becomes sugarcoating. I mean, there was a movie, I think it was, that it was like there was this girl who was a waitress who was amazing to the customers, and she could upsell whoever's in front of them and with compliments, with this, with the look, the this, the that, or whatever, and she could upsell and she was great at it, and she'd get thanked and appreciative and tips, but as soon as she was done facing that person and she turned away, the smile went away, the glow went away, and it was just for show.
Wow.
And that was and it was like, oh, you just cringe when you see that. That's the thing. It's like, "Wait a second. What if there's an actual joy? What if there's a joy? What if I actually truly love helping you?" Because if my help does not I if I mean, here and this gets into a philosophical angle, but where I live a lot, is if you ever wanna kill somebody, like, just their drive, their spunk, and take the life out of them, convince them that their help is not needed, and convince them that their help is not wanted.
Wow. Yeah.
And so, we flip that on its head and we go, "Okay, I go into a place where my help actually feels like it contributes, it elevates, it is worthwhile." Not falsely, legitimately, and 'cause that's the kind of relationship I have with my clients. I mean, if my client does something great, I can say, "That's freaking great." And if they start to do something that's a shortcut, I'm gonna say, "Cut that shit out. That's bullshit."
Yeah. Yeah.
And they love me. I'm not doing it and I'm not now holding a grudge. I'm like, "Oh, I'm pulling him on that bullshit so it doesn't have a chance to grow roots."
Right.
That's unacceptable. That's eat away, man.
Yeah. Well, and the thing you had mentioned there about, if they have a purpose that their existence matters, I think, putting that as part of your culture that people feel like they matter, I think is pretty critical because, for me, I love the discussion of culture because the way I talk about culture is cultivated. The culture that you have is because I've either nurture or neglect. And if you're not strategic about it, it's going to hurt your brand and what you're doing with all your branding efforts. And a recent thing that had happened that's talked about online right now is some people that worked at Chick-fil-A created what Chick-fil-A felt was a very inappropriate video, and the entire staff of that Chick-fil-A got fired because Chick-fil-A wanted to protect their culture and what they stood for. And I think if we as a business, as a brand, aren't, if we have people and we're not protective of our culture, we're going to get the culture that's a result of neglect, which is weeds, which is sometimes destructive, which is not what's going to actually be a part of what we want to do as a business. And so I think culture and protecting it and making sure you have a healthy culture is what then helps with being a rich brand, poor brand, and executing on your brand and doing the things that you want to do. You suddenly have them more effective because it's consistent from internally to externally. Everything's consistent, and people feel that it's a true brand.
Oh, totally, totally, and it's, eh, it's, I mean, I have one of my favorite client, longtime client. We've been working together for 35 years, and, he's built and grown and sold numerous companies, done very, very, very well. We just get on really, really well, and when you can empower one another, it's kinda like there's a synergy that it's not encroaching on another, but it's recognizing, "Hey, I operate at a high level." And then when he and I had this discussion, and he goes, because I had referred someone to do a particular project, didn't pan out. Person didn't pan out. I mean, they said all the right things. I don't think they were malicious. Their just sense of what excellence actually looked like was different than what we thought. And so he and I, my client and I, we had the conversation. He goes, A players, we have to play with it. A players work best with A players. He goes, "The B players are gonna hire C players, and it's not and it erodes and it weakens us, and it takes away the time, and now we're babysitting, and it doesn't become." And it's not anything that anyone is less than not worthy of assistance, but if we have the goal to achieve a lot, if we have the goal, maximize out every 24 hours and to make a difference and multiply our impact, well, that's just an ownership of, like, to what at the point that I guess it was this threshold, it was my realization. At the point that my job started to become damage control, their incompetence. Now that percentage of my time has now been taken away from operating at an A-player level, and now it's, like, being fractioned off, and now a percentage is moderating someone else's inability to see, have the right initiative, the right accountability. Now, all of a sudden, there's a l we've all got less as opposed to pushing ourselves up.
Right. And culture makes such a big difference. Now, one of the things that, we've talked about differentiation, we've talked about rising above the noise. What about, the surprise economy and why that's important? And I guess it also almost transitions into the discussion of how is AI hurting that? How is AI going to hurt that as we
I
move
I
forward with
love
both of
this.
those?
I've been writing a lot of articles on this, and if those who are listening, if you are not subscribed to my weekly newsletter at risingabovethenoise.com, what's gonna happen is Paul is gonna give me your name and your number. I will hunt you down. So, basically, it works like this. It works like this. What podcast would be complete without a threat? I mean,
Yeah, yeah. I encourage all my guests to do that.
so to your point of the surprise economy, and I first wrote about that, and I almost take it for granted sometimes. Then every now and again, it's like, "Oh, no, no, no," and I forget. But that was I talked about the unknowns, and I'm actually writing about that this Saturday. There's 2 layers to everything. There's the known, which is the predictable, it's the expected, and there's the unknowns. It's not predictable in a good way. It's a surprise. It's a delight. It's like, "Ooh, I didn't see that coming." And I use this as a very clear-cut example. Let's say you have this really cool boutique shop of whatever. You fill in the blank. It could be sneakers, it could be luxury sports cars. I don't give a shit. You pick it, whatever it is, right? And on the window, it says, "Opens at 9, closes at 5." Now, it's gonna open up at 9. Yay, beer. And at 4:59, click, 5 o'clock, close the door. That's the expected. Is any customer or client going to celebrate that incredible, predictable thing? You said you were gonna do it, and you did it. It's not necessarily the thing. There's a big difference between what gets customers to, like, stay with you, you know, and or not leave because they're predictable, right? Then they're gonna not leave. You haven't let them down, but what's gonna get them to keep coming back? What's gonna get them to keep coming back is the surprise side. It's like, "Oh, you need a special meeting," or, "Oh, you did." And I had recently written an article about 11 Madison Park, where about their level of hospitality and how they turned these little negatives into positives and moments of celebration, and they were all in the category, and almost all of them cost next to nothing. It's the one thing to realize. That category of the unexpected, that category of the unknown, the surprises, the the things that you didn't have to do, but did anyway, are what will keep people coming back.
Yeah,
That
a
is
little
what will
something,
keep them
something.
that will keep them being loyal because they never know what that surprise might be, because it's real. It's genuine. It's in real time. "Oh, you came in." I mean, and case in point, to 11 Madison Park. They had uh, some travelers from out of the country eat at the restaurant, and they overheard in their conversation, at one point, that they'd never eaten a New York hot dog. And so the owner at the time, Will Guidara, he runs out to a hot dog vendor. He actually gets a hot dog, brings it to the kitchen, they plate it nicely, and they bring it out to those people. You're telling me you don't have a lifetime customer at that point? Are you kidding? Now, what did it cost? Let's see, 4 minutes plus $2 for a meal that probably is anywhere between 400 and $1,000.
Wow.
That's the thing. So the knowns, the knowns need to be locked in.
The expected, yeah, yeah.
The expected, the knowns, the predictable. I mean, another example, Whole Foods. They're brilliant at it. You go to Whole Foods, they got all the crap on the aisle, all the stuff, the usual, the expected. And then it's when you turn the corner and they got those freaking things under those plastic domes, and you have to try it. Those bastards, right? And it's like, there it is. And you try, you're like, damn, that's good. Okay, I'll take a bag of this, I'll take a bottle, a jar of that, and da-da-da. Fine, you know? But that's a little
Yeah.
element of surprise, delight, you know, and
I
maybe
love
it might
that.
be music. Maybe, and I first got the notion of how powerful this was when cell phones started to become, especially the smartphones, where you start seeing and exactly who's calling. And I had this one little mischievous little prank moment with someone. I thought someone was calling. Let's say it was Penelope. And so I saw the line and I said, "Hello, Penelope's dedicated hotline. How may I help you?" And she laughed her ass off for about 2 minutes. Let's see, what did it take me? That was about maybe 6.5 seconds. It made her day. And whenever she needs to call me, she knows she can call me and I'm there for her.
Yeah, yeah.
It's that kind of thing. They could be the smallest, but those will be the things that will delight, surprise, and they're like glue, man. That's what gets them coming back. They're predictable, we'll keep them from going away, but get them coming back, that's the surprise, and that I cover that in the book, and that is one of the most powerful things as part of the tool.
Which book is that one in? That's
That's in Brand Intervention.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And you see businesses doing that. Even with Five Guys. When you order the fries, they always chuck in a little extra. They put another scoopful in there that are all over the bottom of the bag as just a little something, something, a little something extra.
Absolutely.
Little, I guess in the South they call it lanyap, just something a little extra.
Did you ever see did you ever see Cracker Jacks? Remember the box, Cracker Jacks?
Yeah, 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 yeah,
Cracker Jacks, what was it? So we knew all the caramel popcorny crap that was in the top. It was a surprise toy at the bottom. We never knew what it was gonna be.
yeah,
And what's
yeah.
why what that got us coming back.
Right, right. Well, and it's those surprises that, like you even mentioned, it doesn't even have to be that expensive. I remember my wife and I stayed at a hotel once, and we were by the pool, and I looked up, and there was a button, and it said the popsicle line or popsicle hotline. And when you press it, somebody runs out with a popsicle. And gives you a popsicle, fresh out of the freezer. And I thought, if I had my kids here, if I had young kids, and we were deciding to go vacation to that same place again, guess where the kids are going to want to have us to book is this place that gives you free popsicles whenever you press the button. And for them it's what, a couple of cents for a popsicle. But for if you've got a family that's traveling, if you've got a family that has young kids, they want the place that had the popsicle hotline, because it was something that just was a little extra, something that was unexpected, that made
That's
all
right.
the difference.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
All right,
No, no.
so we've talked about a lot of things, a lot amazing things, and I'm sure we can talk for another couple of hours. But I do want to give you time. We've talked about your books. What's the best way to get a hold of you? What's the best way to learn more about you, to read more of your thoughts?
Totally. Well, certainly go to risingabovethenoise.com, RISING, risingabovethenoise.com. You can subscribe to my newsletter. There's so much content there. It's insane. You can check me out. I'm on LinkedIn all the time. We got a lot of new stuff coming out on Instagram, and I also have a YouTube channel. But I would say risingabovethenoise.com, the books. and amazing podcasts like this.
Awesome. Well, I'll have those links in the show notes. That way, everybody can quickly find those or click on those. One of the other questions that I like to ask is, what's a head smack that you want to share, or a question you wish I'd asked you?
Well, as far as a head smack, I would say don't sneak up on greatness. Greatness and awesomeness, appreciate audacity, appreciate conviction, and don't kind of tiptoe sneaking up. Maybe greatness and awesomeness or something magical or remarkable might take notice of you. You bring life into brands. You bring life into that special moment. It didn't happen because you were lucky. It happened because you showed up.
That's so good. Well, thank you so much, David. This has been amazing. I think we're probably going to have to do a follow up. I'm sure there's a million more things that we can talk about, but I appreciate you
Absolutely.
coming on, man.
For sure, man. My pleasure. My pleasure.
You are listening to Conversations with Misfits, Mavericks, and Trailblazers.